we were fighting against that, and we start with best practice in industrial IoT. Thomas, what are your first thoughts by thinking about best practice in IoT?
Well, if I think about our workshop series, I think we had 6 great workshops on a variety of topics. But definitely for me, especially in these days, I think secure remote access would be the first topic to talk about, because the secure connection to a production site and from a production site for accessing the site, but also for transferring data from that site, that is really key for future business models.
And we start with secure remote services in our panel series, where we had to acknowledge that growing numbers of intrusion events are reported. Some studies stated that in 21 ransomware attacks, which attacked directly industrial plants and equipment, overtook even the attacks by email. They were more for main reason. One is mal-configured and maintained remote access channels. They are often easy to break. The second are still unbelievable user and password credentials, which are sometimes still defaults or very easy to decrypt. You know the examples. And for attackers, is this an invitation? Low effort and almost no risk. But fortunately, our best practice partners presented better approaches.
Yeah, they definitely did. We had 2 contributions, one from a single company, from Groß-Beckert, and the other one from our German Mechanical Engineering Industry Association, the VDMA, which is currently working on has a working group on remote access patterns, I would say. But maybe I can give some more details on that later on.
Right.
So I think really this remote access is becoming important because it will increase efficiency and productivity. So where in the past you had an engineer with a need to travel to a customer site, if there was a problem, you had the need to travel there. Now, within minutes or even seconds, you can access the site and get a holistic picture. Getting data from the site, maybe getting even more insights with augmented reality, like we do at Couronné with some glasses. But that, of course, you mentioned the damages, the threats. There are challenges, but I think we shouldn't let the risks dominate, but we should take a look at the good examples that prove that you can also do that in a secure manner.
And I think there's no question that digitization opens up such really promising opportunities that we could not draw back, we could not go behind that. We have to tackle the risks and to do our, let me say, homework on optimizing security.
Yeah, and the current COVID-19 pandemic, it really showed the necessity to do that, because due to travel restrictions, lockdowns, no one was able to travel, so you had to rely on those services.
Right.
That's why.
And if we go a little bit in the best practice example of Groß-Beckert, maybe you can tell also some details on that. I personally remember one aspect. This company has, let me say, driven by pain, a lot of very, very interesting learnings on how they configure their machines on the customer side. And one thing I remember is that they recommend to have one separate firewall for each machine. What do you think about this approach?
Well, I think that is what exactly was one of the learnings. There are several approaches. I think for them it's a perfect solution, because they are mainly using their machines in their own production sites. They have a limited number of suppliers accessing them, and so they can have a very fine-grained concept for accessing the machine, for filtering with firewalls. And they did it with a, I would say, rather low budget, but with smart ideas. maybe that's not the solution to go for everyone, but for them it's a perfect fit. Right. And what I think is important to point out is that they combined this technical solution, they combined it with the appropriate processes and the governance. So they also talked to their suppliers. They established processes for approving suppliers, for accessing the site, and that the combination is what makes the security holistic. It's not only having some technology in place that will solve all the problems.
Yes, it's a really important aspect to having a close collaboration between manufacturer of machines and the clients which operate the machines in the field. So one thing more, VDMA, you mentioned it already, they recommend avoidance of direct remote administration channels like RDP, Citrix or SSH. Two-factor authentication, they really stress and recommend in combination with hardening measures like deactivation of SMB 1.0 protocol on all systems and also patch management for systems and applications everywhere. These are very basic measures, but they are still necessary, as we heard.
Definitely, you always have to start with the basics. What we learned in our series is that there's a very interesting discussion going on in the VDMA. They have established a working group with users of remote support and providers of remote support, and also with solution providers for technical solutions and maybe organizational solutions, to define or identify some blueprints for remote support, which clearly show there is not one single solution where you can say, okay, you have to do it like this, there needs to be some jump host here, or it needs to be a VPN connection, but there might be several architectures that fit the purpose. And it depends on the use case, what architecture pattern to choose. And that's what I've found very interesting, that you could say, okay, there might be some legacy things where everyone agrees, okay, this is more the past, it's old-fashioned. But for the future, we see different approaches depending on the size of the partners, depending on the frequency of access, depending on also the needs for documentation, for logs, for analysis. Right. And so that's one of the learnings. You can choose different patterns, but if you decide for one, then you need to have a close dialogue with your partners, yes, depending on who you are, and then establishing that from the beginning to the end.